and say, I'm David. This is my mum, Eleanor. She's 91, and we've been reading my book, Thriving at Nature's Pace, for quite a few months now. I think we started just before the new year. And it's about a new approach to climate change. And we are in a section about a new different sort of economics that I call emergent economics. It's the idea that nature's economy is very rich, and it comes about, it emerges naturally because things are always there that we need. And it changes the way we think about what we need. I think that's the main thing about it, because we don't think in terms of having to have money to start everything. Then we can actually see other resources that we don't. And an example of that, at the last time we were reading this, was about the story of Christmas. Are you okay, Mum? Got a hiccup? Just Mum's got hiccups. and the story of Christmas is the story of Jesus being born, and he was looking for a place to stay, got to Bethlehem, but there was nowhere. I ended up in a stable, and obviously the point was that, oh, why in a stable? How could Jesus, the Son of God, be born in a place like that? And I had this epiphany, this realization, which was that actually the stable was the perfect place, because it had everything that it needed, and most of all, it had the ability for all the people to come, the shepherds and the kings and the wise men and all of those people, in a way that wouldn't have been possible. And it protected him because at the time, King Harold, who was a king over the land where Bethlehem was very jealous, and eventually actually killed all the firstborn in an attempt to kill Jesus. So if it wasn't for the fact that he was away in a stable, he wouldn't have been able to survive that. So there you go, kind of what we don't expect. Sometimes we think is a bad thing, but it may turn out that actually that's just what we need. And that's what emergent economics is about, having just what we need. And of course, the difficulty about this is money, the influence of money, because it makes us judge what it is that we could have instead. And that actually then sets us on a path that ultimately creates climate change, because we then start thinking about all the things that we could have instead. We end up doing too much. We end up excavating all this stuff from the ground to try and pursue that. It gets us locked into a lifestyle that we can't afford, or if we can afford, that the planet can't afford. And when the planet can't afford it, it kind of hiccups and burps and gives us climate change, which actually then comes and hurts us back. So there you go. Thriving at Nature's Pace is about a new approach to climate change. I'm reading it with my mum. So I'm in the section on emergent economics, and this I'm going to carry on for a bit longer. It's quite a long section, so I'm just going to do a couple more pages in that way, and we'll finish this chapter tomorrow, I think. So this goes back to the influence of money. It makes people see only the things that money buys. This encourages an economy that starts by thinking in terms of control. Nature provides more than is seen by human beings, modern humans. Nature allows control to emerge. Life emerges first, and then out of the complexity of the interactions, order is established. The resources that are necessary to thrive with climate change may well be there already, just as life emerges through the pain of labor. A proper emergent economy may need to emerge through the pain of climate change. There are, of course, occasions where the monitors and medical interventions are absolutely necessary. This is in talking about birth. But outside of those cases, people still spend all the money they can afford for a process that every mammal is quite capable of doing without interventions. And today, where scans and tests can identify the cases where medical support for birth is actually necessary, even those people who clearly do not need it, who spend money to have that false sense of security. But what they buy are things. They rarely consider the interactions. Everything about pregnancy, from the swelling of the mother's breasts in the early weeks to the Braxton-Hicks contractions, contribute to the body's preparation. The Braxton-Hicks contractions themselves are practice drills for the body. Everything from the pregnancy announcement to preparing a cot contributes to the social preparation. This is how all the parts are interacting to prepare for life to emerge. They say it takes a village to bring up a child. That is how nature readies a village to support it. The same should be happening with climate change. People, businesses, and communities should be preparing themselves The wildfires, cyclones, droughts, and floods are surely calls for practice drills. They signify nature telling modern society to prepare, but modern society largely looks at them and thinks about how it can buy its way out of having to go through climate change. When money for a cot is not available, people will prepare something else in its place. It may be as simple as a paper box. This is an example of innovation. When grandparents are not around to help, parents will think of another person who can be around. That is yet another innovation. People have always innovated. The midwife, for example, is a natural innovation to assist the birthing mother before, during, and after the birth. Evidence of midwifery dates back tens of thousands of years. However, when birth is put into a medical setting, innovations become stifled. That is, innovations that parents and those close to the birth may come up with themselves are downplayed. Instead, they are told innovations need to come from experts. When this happens, emergence is destroyed. Innovations then fall into the sole remit of medical experts. They dictate and pontificate over nature. The birthing environment is now a fully controlled environment, and the birthing mother and child are commodities in the process of producing income for a birthing industry. Everything that can happen is prepared for and at considerable expense, yet despite this, things go wrong. They often go wrong because nature is curtailed, making the obstetrics and gynecology experts often the most highly sued medical professionals. The more modern humans disconnect from nature in their lives, the more they lose confidence in their own ability to thrive at nature's pace. Innovating to prepare for climate change becomes the remit of experts. These are typical investment professionals because under the modern economy, innovations are about money. When investment professionals become involved, the genuine opportunity for innovations is often lost. It is no longer about creating abundance, but about creating money to hoard. The word innovation is rarely used away from a financial context. It is even more rarely used without the sense that money is necessary to kickstart innovations. Startup funding, venture capital, and incubator labs are all terms associated with money. They reinforce the received wisdom that knowledge is hierarchical, money is necessary, and governance has to be top-down. Governance is relevant because it dictates how money is used. If anyone has any doubt about that, think of the layers of committees and authorizations necessary before $1,000, let alone $1 billion, can be spent. Emergence is the opposite. It springs from the interactions between individuals. Emergence is a collective outcome. When a person takes a walk down a busy road, he is actually not walking alone. He is part of a collective movement. That is why people so rarely bump into each other, even when they're staring down at their smartphones. By interacting with people around them with occasional glances and listening to sounds, each person senses the flow. Their pace is moderated by the movement of everyone else. Each person still picks up and chooses their own path, but they have the autonomy to stop or hurry on. However, the fact that they do not bump into each other is because everyone's movement is connected. That collective connection is emergence. Imagine doing the same thing with billiard balls, then the balls will bump into each other. There is no emergence with billiard balls because there is no interaction. There is no recognition of any billiard ball by any other billiard ball until they collide, and then it is too late. Emergence can appear in economics in a similar way. Each economic agent, individual person, business, community, and even government just needs to be aware of what others around them are doing. Financial markets traders do this in the trading pits. That's how they make money. That's why the trading pits were developed. It is so that all the traders can get a sense of what is going on and respond accordingly for their own personal benefits. This is also with emergence. Transactional economics replaces the richness of these interactions with just one thing: price. It postulates a theory that all the information is contained in the price. This is a very low context economy. This is as sensible as saying that everything that matters about a person is fully encapsulated in the color of their eyes. It ridicules the social interactions that make economics work. It classifies those social interactions as cognitive biases and irrational behavior. It says people are not logical. The result is that any economics of purpose is reduced to hoarding money. And this is fine as long as resources are plentiful, because then everyone can hoard. However, when climate change strikes and resources become scarce, such an economy will be too depleted of its social capital to survive. This is why an emergent approach that is rich in social capital is essential to thrive with climate change. Take the devastation from flooding in Europe in 2024. No experts predicted the event. In Spain, after the flooding in Valencia, the experts struggled to respond. Response came as an emergence of youths arriving with brooms and brushes. During the COP28 period, the author, together with others, ran an online program inviting people to share their experiences. The intention was to see how much people cared. One speaker from Kenya talked about her work. It started with wanting to improve gender equality and tackling female genital mutilation. These are popular actions promoted by the UN, but she rapidly realized that they cannot protect gender rights for women and girls until the women and girls have their own livelihoods. Stopping female genital mutilation does not do that. She started to explore how to create economic livelihoods. There was no funding. She started introducing agricultural ideas she had learned from their childhoods. Today, her approaches come with the name regenerative agriculture when spoken of in developed countries. But they are really ancient techniques that the developed world has forgotten. Regenerative is often taken to mean nature needs regenerating, but really nature is doing fine. It is the modern human's relationship with nature that needs regenerating. The women took it up and developed their own economic independence. Women and girls were able to grow their own food and feed their families. This gave them power in the household and disrupted the power dynamics. The women became innovators. Money wasn't necessary to create these innovations, and because money wasn't involved, there was no problems with intellectual property. The women did not have to sign non-disclosure agreements. This allowed the interactions to spread. The technology used was an A-frame. This is three pieces of sticks tied into a shape of capital letter A. They used this to trace the gradients of the land. Knowing the gradients, they dug deep trenches, were 1 foot wide and 4 feet deep, to capture the water when rain came. The region is hot and semi-arid. They innovated on the shape of the trenches to prevent water loss. The 1 foot width minimized the exposed surface area, and the 4 feet deep improved the water capture capacity. Not many scientific experts would come up with that design. They would have come up with a bigger pond with a greater surface area, and then to tackle the problem of water loss with a cover. That would have needed resources that were not available. The women's solution used the soil itself to prevent water loss. That needed no money, and it also solved the issue of how to get the water to the roots. Emergence works. Money is often not the issue. It's often the barrier to innovation. The environment itself provides the resources. As innovations develop without money, there is no need to fight for intellectual property rights. Knowledge spreads, and it spreads. It brings in more social interaction, and social capital builds. This support for each other becomes easier to provide. That is the basis on which good economics grows. So I'm going to pause here, and we're going to go on the next bit about the characteristics of the emergent economics, because we'll probably have a few more pages and it's easy to stop now. So, Mum, any last words before we finish?
So the women are very clever.
The women are really clever. Yep, much more than the men.
Yeah.
They were much more capable, and they knew what is needed,
Yeah.
and they got on with it.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to wait for the money to be there, and the men were sitting around talking about what they need before it can happen. My mum's like that, actually. When I was growing up, Mum was always able to make things happen just by doing it. She made us all these seats out of these washing powder cartons. We had these big cylindrical cartons, and we made our seats, and she had all these things along. And it was all just emergent. I think that's where I get the ideas. So there you go, Mum. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm reading my book, Thriving at Nature's Pace, with my mum. It's about a new approach to climate change. Do recommend it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.